What is happening, everybody? Welcome to MLB Live Before Lock, and a little bit of a small slate today. We've only got 5 MLB games tonight, and I'm a little surprised that we got the lock at 640 as opposed to the normal 7 or like 705 or 710 lock. But still of note, want to make sure you guys are aware that we're going to be locking today at 640. So we'll be doing the show right up until lock at 640. Any questions you guys have, feel free to throw those into the YouTube chat, or if you're a Stochastic sub, at me in our Discord channel. I'll be answering those questions as we go as well. If you guys are watching on YouTube, one big thing you do to help us out, simply like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Does a whole bunch of good to help us out. 5-game slate here today, Matt. How you feeling about this one?
I feel okay. I feel probably better about it as the day's gone on, which is how it usually works because I'm playing it, so I want to feel better about it. But yeah, I mean, it's an ugly slate as far as pitching goes, but we've got Glasnow. There's a couple other guys that look appealing. So kind of a normal 5-game slate. I'm happy they kept that 640 game personally.
Yep. For people in the chat who are asking, I did get a haircut today. I had a couple of things I had to do. I had to go to the DMV, had to drop my license plates off because I had my car was leased. The lease ran up, so I bought it out, which for some reason you have to get new license plates for, which I think is like totally bizarre, but whatever, part of the status quo. So had to go over to the DMV, wait online, do all that stuff. And then I went and got my haircut while I was out as well. So that is that's where we're at for today. That's what my day has been, in addition to, doing the morning baseball show and some of my other tasks that I have at work over the course of the day. I like this slate for a couple of reasons, a whole lot, Matt. Here's where I really, really like a slate. When I'm looking at our data and I'm kind of drawing some of my own opinions on what I think about pitchers and spots on the slate, and then when I run everything through the sims and everything aligns, like just the data and the simulations give me the things that I otherwise wanted to have, it makes me feel pretty good about a slate. So we're going to start getting into it here by starting by talking about the pitchers. We just got the Dodgers lineup. Please don't be a weird lineup because I already have everything submitted. Let's see. Dodgers lineup is
No Will Smith.
So the Dodgers, Betts, Ohtani, Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez, Kike Hernandez, Gavin Lux, Chris Taylor, Outman, Barnes. So no Will Smith in the lineup. Let me see.
They are a lot cheaper than expected because no Smith, no Muncy.
Yeah, no Smith, no Muncy, and just double checking everything before. Yeah, this is going to be different. This is going to be a different than expected lineup for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Really quick before we get into the pitchers, is this going to change anything for you on the slate?
Personally, no. I do think it changes ownership and makes the Dodgers higher owned. They're easier to get to. No Pajes as well, who had also been kind of priced up. Like, I don't like the Dodgers as much now. Their lineup outside of the top 3 kind of stinks. It's not like the best matchup in the world. So it solidifies that I like Houston more than the Dodgers. How about yourself?
I mean, the Dodgers were a team that I like the top bats as one-offs, but I found them hard to make full 5-man stacks of. And I still don't really think it's a team I'm going to be getting to all that much. There's other spots that I'm liking a good amount on the slate. I mean, coming into this, I had 2 out of 150 my lineups for 5-man Dodger stacks. It's a team that was hard to be getting to. I'm not gonna be prioritizing the Dodgers. Other spots that I do like to get to. There is one Dodger though that I'm going to be prioritizing. I think a lot of you guys are as well, and that is the pitcher for them on the mound today, Tyler Glasnow. Our current projected ownership on Glasnow, he's projected for 61% ownership on DraftKings, 39% ownership on FanDuel. The easy decision that you guys are going to make today is playing Tyler Glasnow in a cash game. If you do play MLB DFS for cash purposes, let's start by talking about Tyler Glasnow on DraftKings, Matt, and then we'll talk about him on FanDuel as well. What are you going to do with him relative to his ownership? Because it's easy to go out and say, play Tyler Glasnow, but do you think Glasnow is worthy of 61% projected ownership?
I do. He's by far the best pitching option on this slate. I mean, he's right up there as the top DFS pitcher in baseball right now with Strider hurt, Garrett Cole hurt. Yeah, he might just be the best pitcher in baseball right now. He's certainly in that mix. Matchup isn't like amazing. It's not like Colorado, Oakland, or Colorado or the White Sox. Cincinnati's a little bit beat up. They strike out a ton against righties. I think he's by far the best option, so the ownership's deserved.
By the way, shout out to Humboldt Parker. as well as Kickstart. Humboldt Parker said, give me props. All right, dude. What's up? How you doing? Hey, because I see that you're in the chat now. Kickstart said, yo, and then also a hi from Francesco in the chat here. So what's happening, fellas? And of course, later tonight, NBA show. That's going to be happening in playback. And then afterwards, Josh and myself going to be doing the post-lock show. I'll be watching that Knicks-Pacers game for you guys later on tonight, and we'll be reacting to some of that. But yeah, for me, as far as pitching goes, I wasn't exactly sure earlier in the day where I'd ultimately land on Tyler Glasnow. He's in 80% of my lineups now. So I'm going to be getting to a lot of Tyler Glasnow. And if anything, the Dodgers lineup here only made it even a little bit easier to be getting to Tyler Glasnow, but it's not going to have any kind of real impact. He's in 80% of my lineups. He's projected for 61% ownership. Early in the day, I figured I was going to be somewhere around the field on Glasnow, but ultimately I ended up being able to be overweight to him, which I'm totally cool with.
Yeah, it's like if you're not playing Glasnow, like where are you going? So it's kind of one of those type slates. Like certainly he's not like prime Greg Maddux or like Jacob deGrom from a couple years ago where like he's never getting hit around. We saw Washington get to him, but I'll take my chances on this slate that he's the best pitcher by a country mile.
And then let's talk about him on FanDuel as well. Like, I just think Tyler Glasnow warrants like a little few minute block of just conversation strictly about him because he's so important to this slate. Over on the FanDuel side of things, Matt, Glasnow was 39% owned on a single pitcher site. Once again, you're playing Tyler Glasnow in cash games. For tournaments, do you think Tyler Glasnow is warranted of his FanDuel ownership? Keep in mind that he's also 11,300 on FanDuel, so quite a bit more expensive.
So I do think that like when you get players, pitchers this high owned on both FanDuel and DraftKings, you can start to have the conversation about, going under the field or fading them in single entry simply because of the ownership. But I think that's the only thing I see as like why to get off Glasnow here. So yeah, I think that ownership is fine.
Yeah, I find him actually easier to get off. Oddly, I find him easier to get off on FanDuel than on DraftKings because it's a single pitcher site. There's other pitchers I like on FanDuel and guys on a points per dollar basis that I think you make a pretty good case for on FanDuel. We'll talk more about them as we go here. So at least as far as FanDuel is concerned, yeah, Tyler Glasnow is still the highest overall priority pitcher in tournaments, but there actually are other guys I like to get to where if I was playing, let's say, 100 lineups on FanDuel, I think I would have less than 40% of Tyler Glasnow.
Yeah, I mean, he's so expensive, it kind of pigeonholes you into a certain type of lineup. So I think it does make sense in a way that he's harder for you to get to on FanDuel.
Let's go back to talking about the pitchers over on DK now, and then we'll go back and forth between the two sites. We'll be able to talk about like all the pitchers and the stacks for this slate with it only being 5 games. So let's talk about another guy who's kind of in a price tier of his own, Matt, and that is going to be Jared Jones, who is now 28% owned. So he's risen to be the second most popular pitcher on DraftKings. He's been one of the best pitchers overall in baseball. Stuff terrific for Jared Jones. Strikeout rate has also been fantastic for him. Are you buying into what we've seen in the early going out of Jared Jones, one of the top pitching prospects in baseball coming into the year? 2.68 ERA, 3.06 expected ERA, and a 31% strikeout rate through the first, 8 starts of his career. What do you make of his early results so far this season? And what does it make you want to do with him in DFS in a tough spot and also being chalk all at the same time?
My issues with Jones are twofold. One, he's expensive enough. We're playing him in Glasnow, I think is problematic. And while it's doable, I think you're going to see lineups look similar that do that. I much prefer Glasnow. So there's that. Second of all, he hasn't been as sharp recently. I think that makes sense. The league's starting to figure him out a little bit. I think he's the second best option on this slate, but far from a priority. How about you?
Let's see. What do I have of Jared Jones? So I'm also making some updates for my lineups, considering the starting lineup that came out for the Dodgers. And Jones, I'm right around in line with the field on Jones. I have him in 27.3% of my lineup, so right a quarter of them. Not any kind of real stand on him, Like, I also don't know exactly what to make of him in terms of he's clearly been incredible so far this year, but it's a small sample size. Teams haven't got that much of a look at him or anything like that. What does he look like as the season starts to go on a little bit? So I think I think he's, if we're just taking all the pitchers on the slate, I think he should have the second highest expected output on the slate. With the ownership there, I'm just no real stand for me. I'm right in line with the field on him.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like, I agree with you. If I was just picking pitchers who I expected to score the most fantasy points, it'd be Glasnow, then Jones, then whoever.
Mhm.
But I think the difference between Glasnow and Jones is like the biggest of the bunch.
And I actually do have somebody that, oh, and I see we got a super chat here as well from Jazzy Faye Plays. Jazzy saying, long overdue super chat as a thank you for some of the cash I made from your data and breakdowns via free end member content. Also, just got the weekly NBA Sims best tips / links for new users, please. All right. So for Showdown, you don't really have to make too many kinds of considerations for Showdown. You don't have to worry about late swap either. And presumably, we're only going to have one game NBA slates the rest of the way. There's a chance if the Pacers beat the Knicks tomorrow, and then so we've got the two upcoming games, right? Pacers Knicks is tomorrow. Tonight is Timberwolves Nuggets. So if the Timberwolves win tomorrow, and then we get the Timberwolves win today, and the Pacers win tomorrow, then there's going to be a 2-game slate on Sunday. But if one of those teams loses, then it means that Sunday is a 1-game slate, or if both of them lose, then it's a 0-game slate, and there's no NBA on Sunday. So one thing to take note of, you don't have to worry about late swapping or anything like that. Jazzy, I did make a video on how to use the NBA Sims, which is up on the YouTube channel, which is definitely going to help you. But as far as the contest generator and the Sims go for a 1-game slate, you could pretty easily just press generate lineups on the contest generator, then simulate it when the lineups come out. You can check your exposures. If there's anybody that you personally want to be higher or lower on, you can make individual ROI boosts to those players. But there isn't too many kinds of considerations you have to make for advanced strategy on a 1-game slate. The Sims are really going to take care of a lot of that for you. But let me see if I could find the video. NBA Sims. And I'll throw it into the YouTube chat. Here it is. All right. Copy. Paste. There it is. All right. So there's the link there. Yeah, go check that out. The video, it's like 20-ish minutes or something like that. I'll walk you through all the individual ways to use the contest generator in the Sims tool. If you have any additional questions, Jazzy, and you're in the Discord channel, at me after the show, and I'll be around to answer those questions for sure. But what I was going to say there, Matt, is so while I'm pretty in line with the field on Jared Jones, I do have a really big stand on the pitcher on the opposite end of this game, and that's Justin Steele. I'm very surprised that he's not more popular at this price point. Now, to start the year, he hasn't been in his Cy Young form or anything along those lines, but I still think that this is a guy like maybe we say Jared Jones is better than him. At the very least, he's the third best pitcher on this slate. He's not priced like it. He's not picking up ownership like he is. And while the start of this year, it's only 3 starts, 13 innings we've seen out of him, so it's not all that great, but he was pretty clearly one of the best pitchers in baseball each of the last 2 seasons, Justin Steele. I think he's going to be fine going forward. There's no real glaring issues with velocity or anything like that. And he is priced down as if he's not the same starting pitcher. And he's $7,300 on DraftKings, 26% owned, so not crazy popular for a slate of this size. I really like Justin Steele, all things being considered. Price point, ownership, the matchup against the Pirates. Justin Steele is my favorite pitcher to be getting to in tournaments, at least relative to his ownership. Would you agree with that, Matt, or is there a different cheap starting pitcher you're liking?
I like Steele here, but I like Cooper Criswell a little bit more. Again, I'm with you. I think Steele is ultimately going to be the better pitcher, but I think Criswell is in better form and not getting nearly the ownership. I think he comes in like a third as owned as Steele, which is what we're showing. He's a little bit cheaper. I like both of them. I slightly prefer Criswell. Just no Taijuan Walker for me.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a pitcher here in Taijuan Walker. We'll talk about him in a little bit here, but also I'll talk about some of the comments in YouTube, which is Nicholas Robertson wants to know, am I an idiot? or maybe this is somebody else, but somebody said, maybe it's just addressed. Maybe it says, am I an idiot? Batting average goes up, seeing a pitcher 2 times in a week. So we saw 2 starts for Justin Steele against the Pittsburgh Pirates last year, which I looked at his historical pricing earlier in the day on the strategy show. Lofty and I were looking it up. Would you like to guess, Matt, what his salary was last year in his 2 starts against the Pittsburgh Pirates?
I'm pretty sure I remember it was like he was like 9,500 at least. So yeah, I don't know exactly, but he was for sure way more expensive than he is here. What was it?
He was $9,800 in one of the starts, $9,900 in the other one. You don't, it's the case here is not Justin Steele, like, is he a Cy Young caliber pitcher or anything? The way that I'm generally looking at DFS beyond some of just the ownership, and the ownership also is of the guys who are like decent starting pitchers for cheap. They all have very comparable ownership once you get past Glasnow. So even like Jared Jones, we're throwing him into the mix of the pitchers who are just not Tyler Glasnow. He's 28% owned. Christian Javier is 23% owned. Justin Steele is 26% owned. Taijuan Walker is 25% owned. So the ownership is pretty similar amongst these guys. And then you, at least the way I'm usually breaking down a price-sensitive game like DFS is, going forward, is Justin Steele going to be the same price as he is now? Is he going to be cheaper, or is he going to be more expensive? So I'm looking at it as, am I buying a fair price? Am I buying low, or am I buying high on somebody? To me, very clearly, based on the historical pricing of Justin Steele, we're buying low on him in this spot. I would be very surprised if he's cheaper than $7,300 going forward.
I agree with you, but I also think that's a dangerous game because who's to say he wasn't overpriced last year at 9,800? Like, I think he's a good pitcher. I think the biggest point that you made, which is the strongest argument for him, he doesn't need to be a $9,800 pitcher. He doesn't need to be a Cy Young guy here. He's 7,300 in a perfectly fine matchup on a weak pitching slate. I agree with you. He should be higher owned than he is.
So that's where I'm at with Justin Steele. I have 3 pitchers that are making up the bulk of my exposure today, and they are Tyler Glasnow, number 1, Justin Steele, number 2, but I'm more overweight to Justin Steele than I am to Tyler Glasnow because Glasnow is so popular that, having him in 3/4 of my lineups, it's actually only slightly overweight to the field. Justin Steele's in more than half of my lineup, so I'm way overweight to the field on him. Then I'm about even with Jared Jones, and then by default, I end up coming in underweight to the field on every other pitcher on the slate. So that's how some of my pitcher exposures break down. But let's talk about some of those other guys. And in particular, you had said you like Cooper Criswell a decent amount. We do have Cooper Criswell is projected for just 10% ownership. He is positively leveraged. We have him with a 19.5% chance to be a top 2 scoring pitcher in our top pitchers tool. We've got him also with a 13.9% chance to be one of the top 2 scoring pitchers. So I'm not really getting to Cooper Criswell, but you make a case for him, Matt. Try to sell me on Cooper Criswell.
Okay, so a couple things. It's not really about Criswell himself. It's about 2 things. One, I want to play Houston here. I know they're going to be popular. I think this is a perfectly fine slate to get a little bit different at pitcher because I'll agree with you. Like, Justin Steele is definitely the better pitcher between the 2. He's getting so much more ownership, and Criswell has been good, especially recently. High strikeout matchup here against Tampa. I think if you want to play chalky bats, and I expect Houston to be very popular in like the 121, 250, all that stuff, you got to get different somewhere. I don't want to get off Glasnow. So I'm looking at guys like Criswell and Littell, who are tools like.
There's a spot I really like to get different with that offense. And just because we've done a lot of these shows together, we're probably on the same spot.
Yeah,
it's going to come up in conversation here. I think Taijuan Walker is crazy overowned today.
See, the thing I'm worried about, though, is will he actually come in that high owned? Because I'm worried about that, like the projection. So all these guys being similarly owned, but at the end of the day, Steele and Jones just take all that ownership. I'm worried about it. Not saying I'm going to play that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know what you mean. At the very least, though, particularly in like single entry, I don't think the Mets are going to be all that popular. But of every pitcher on the slate, and this is like independent of just my opinions of Taijuan Walker or anything like that, like even just in our data and when I run everything through the Sims, I don't get anywhere near the exposure in my process to Taijuan Walker as the field does. And that just by default is going to push me even heavier towards the Mets. I mean, I think he's one of the worst pitchers on the slate today. And then also, I think that's a massive red flag is, we're at a point in the season where I take some of the results into account, but I still look at the last few years of pitchers' results much more than I look at just this individual season. But there are individual things that could stand out to me that will really catch my attention. And this is what I noticed when Lofty and I were breaking down the slate on the strategy show. For his career, Taijuan Walker has a 94.3 mile per hour fastball velocity. He has never had a season in his entire career where his fastball velocity has been lower than 93 miles per hour. So far this year, his average fastball velocity is 91.8. That's compared to 94.3 for his career. 2.5 miles as a dip off your career average fastball velocity is a very significant decrease. And that is a big red flag for me for a pitcher in Taijuan Walker going forward. He's pitched poorly this year, which once again is 3 starts. It doesn't mean all that much to me. What a pitcher does in 3 starts, I'm just not going to put that much weight into it. He's got a 4.82 ERA, 5.89 expected ERA, whatever. But if you look at every single projection source for what he's expected to be going forward, everybody's low on him. Steamer, the rest of the season, 4.76 ERA. Zips the rest of the year, 4.81 ERA. The Bat, 4.97 ERA. There's nothing that indicates this guy's going to be good at all going forward. And somehow he's projected to be relatively popular on this slate. So I'll be underweight to the field to him, and I'm going to be stacking the Mets pretty aggressively.
Yeah, we're in the same boat here. My only worry is that Walker doesn't come in as highly owned. But even still, I like the Mets anyways. I think Taijuan Walker stinks like you do. So I like the Mets regardless of Taijuan Walker's ownership. Presuming he is owned like the tools say, though, it's just a feather in the Mets cap.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at with Taijuan Walker. It's just there's so many red flags. And then when you also got that ownership there, it's really driving me towards the Mets. And then also the Mets are cheap enough to where you could play stud starting pitchers with the Mets. It's not that hard to go a Mets stack, which is not crazy popular. You're getting leverage off Taijuan Walker. And then in addition to that, you could pair them with Tyler Glasnow and Jared Jones. You could pair them with Tyler Glasnow and Justin Steele. You can pay whatever pitchers you want with a Mets stack.
Okay, here's my question to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a two-folded question. At what ownership would Walker have to come in at for you to be like upset you played the Mets? Or is there no ownership? Like you don't care that much. You just like the Walker ownership that he's getting. And same token, what ownership would Glasnow have to get to in those, single entry, higher dollar stuff for you to want to get off of
him? All right. So for me to want to be off of Glasnow, I think I would need him to be 80% owned.
That's what I was thinking, like 75, 80%, 85 maybe. I'm with you.
For me to be unhappy, I stack the Mets. Okay, so 2 different questions. For large field tournaments, I'm not going to be upset I stack the Mets no matter what. In single entry tournaments, I wouldn't necessarily be upset I played the Mets unless one of these 2 things happen. One, the Mets all end up being like 15% owned, or right. 2, Taijuan Walker single digit owned.
Yeah. Yes, I'm with you. And again, all of those are possibilities of happening just because projections are just that, projections. Like stuff's going to come in a little bit different or a lot bit different than what projections say, because that's just how the real world works.
Yeah. So those are kinds of I'll say those are the barometers, but I don't think either of those things are going to be the case.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
All right, let's go ahead and look at the rest of the pitchers on the slate. Is there anybody else you have a strong take at as far as pitchers go?
The other guy I like, honestly, and this is just the tools are pushing him to me, is Zach Littell. Basically the same top 2 pitcher percentage as Steele, half the ownership. He's more expensive, but we just talked about it. I like the Mets. They're cheap. I can play 2 expensive pitchers. So I'm kind of digging both pitchers in the Boston game, knowing there's a lot of risk there.
What's the case you have for Littell, or is it just kind of like, hey, this is a small slate, he's not all that popular?
It's a small slate. He's not all that popular. His numbers are good. His underlyings are good. And it's more just like he stands out in the tools. I'm with you. If I were drafting my MLB team in real life, I would take Justin Steele over Zach Littell. Steele also missed a month and a half. He hasn't been great since then. I think there are some question marks there. Enough question marks for me to at least think about Littell here at, again, half the ownership.
All right. Anything else you want to say as far as pitchers go here?
No, I mean, it's a 5-game slate, so like everyone's in play, but Estes and Nick Martinez really tough to get to. Estes is impossible to get to. Martinez is really hard.
Some questions coming to us from Discord. First, Capanicella wants to know, who is my single entry stack for tonight? It is the New York Mets. Is that where you're going to be going as well, Matt, or are you considering somewhere else?
No, I'm stacking the Mets for sure. It's the Mets and Astros for me.
All right. Einsteinem asked about Cooper Criswell. I am not really getting to Cooper Criswell. My final lineups, which I'm uploading right now, I have 3% of Cooper Criswell. Matt made a strong case for him. I just couldn't quite get there. And then Raw Guy 828 said, if we're assuming 3 innings out of Suter, would we get to him at all?
No way.
There's like actual pretty decent options at pitcher for a 5-game slate today. It's not necessary.
3 innings is like, see why, I don't know why you would expect 3 innings either. I think he's just going to open, and it makes sense in this spot. But Nick Martinez in a better spot, so he misses Betts, Ohtani, and Freeman. I think that's all it is.
Yeah, it's just a no for me. No, thank you. No, thank you. I'll be looking elsewhere with my pitchers. Because think, if you get 3 innings out of a pitcher, which is like Matt said, you can't even be guaranteed. You can't even be you can't even be confident that you're going to be getting 3 innings out of him. Is the other issue that you run into there is, let's say that he does get the 3 innings. You need him to, in 3 innings, outscore all of the other pitchers priced around him. It's unlikely.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'd say, and this is kind of like the catch-22 of it all, he's 4K, and the Dodgers, like top 5 or top 4 is really expensive. So like you could conceivably use him in the Dodgers, but then you're using a pitcher against the Dodgers. Dodgers are a little bit cheaper than we thought. Yeah, I can't even make a case for it.
Yeah, it's hard to make a case for it. You need too many things to go your way for that to end up working out. So understand where you're coming from, Rye Guy, but that is a no for me. One final question I'll ask you about pitching before we move on to some of our favorite stacks is, Matt, who do you think is the cash game pitcher to pair with Tyler Glasnow over on DK?
I think you could make reasonable cases for a couple guys, but I think it's Steele. I think he probably ends up the second highest owned. I have no confidence in Javier. Jones is expensive. I think it's Steele. How about you?
Yeah, I'll say Steele as well. You could make a case for Christian Javier because he's going up against the A's, who strike out a whole bunch, and the matchup could just draw ownership towards him. But I mean, going forward, I think that Justin Steele is going to be significantly better than what Christian Javier is going to be. So with that in mind, give me a Justin Steele as my SP2 for cash games today. Now let's go ahead and see, was there another super chat in here? No, just the one there from Jazzy Faye from before. I don't think we're going to have time here to build lineups in the lineup generator for the 5-game slates. We'll just go ahead and talk about some of our stats, but we'll let you guys know that we do have our Edwards promo still going on. Tomorrow is going to be the last day of the Edwards promo. So if you want to sign up for our NBA Sims Max package and get access for less than $20, last call. Tomorrow is going to be the last day for you to sign up for that. Less than $20, get access to everything we have for NBA. Contest generator, you could build lineups on our site. Sims tool, you could simulate lineups on our site. And then, of course, player projections, ownership projections. You get Discord channel, all of that for less than $20. So if you guys need help building lineups for these 1-game showdown slates for NBA, our contest generator and Sims are going to help you out. And they're also going to help you weed out some of those duped lineups that are going to be replicated a lot by the field. Let's talk about offenses here, Matt. And I don't think we have to talk too much more about the Mets. You and I are both on the same page there. Taijuan Walker is a pitcher who we don't think is going to be great going forward. He's going to be picking up ownership. The Mets offense, particularly at the top, is not bad. So I really like the Mets for leverage. As far as the offenses that are the more expensive spend up spots, is there any one in particular that you're liking more than the others?
Yeah, it's definitely Houston. I know they didn't work out last night, but they're in a similarly good spot. Their lineup is really good. They're not overly expensive. They're not even picking up as much ownership as they should be. So yeah, it's Houston for me by pretty good margin. How about you?
Yeah, it's Houston for me as well. They're not the team I have the most exposure to today. That is the New York Mets in large field tournaments. But I think the Houston Astros make a whole lot of sense. There's a bunch of teams that I have like around 10% exposure to, and the Astros are one of them. I have them in, let's see, 13% of lineups, including my 5 and 3-man stacks of them. So also Humboldt Parker and Chad asked, what is a stack? So a stack is in DFS when you're pairing multiple players from the same team together, you're getting some added correlation. I typically consider anything more 3 or more players from the same team. I consider a stack. Is that your barometer as well, Matt? 3 or more? Or do you consider it to be 4 or 5?
Yeah, no, I consider a 3-man a mini stack, a 4-man a stack, and a 5-man a full stack.
There we go. There we go. Yeah, I usually think of 3-man stacks as like secondary stacks, or either for something to save salary with, or like a team like the Dodgers, where the Dodgers are typically very hard to make 5-man stacks of. So I trend more towards making them one-offs or being teams that I get like a 3-man stack of, where I just get those secondary ones. But yeah, I know our data likes the Dodgers, where we have them 12% owned, 12.7% chance to be top stack on the slate. But it's just the pricing of the hitters I actually like. It makes it really prohibitive for me to make 5-man stacks of them.
Yeah, I'm with that. The Dodgers' bottom half of their lineup is particularly weak. When you take out Smith and replace him with Barnes, it's a big drop off. Obviously, no Muncy. So I'm with you. I will say, though, to that point, these are the type of slates I really like getting to bottom of lineups, because obviously on a main slate, I don't mind it either. But the player pool is just so much bigger on those main slates. And on these smaller slates, you'll still see the bottom of the order come in really low owned. I think that's a great way to get leverage.
Let me see my Mets exposure. This is the team I have the most of the Mets by far. I have about 30% Mets stacks, and then my next most roster team is the aforementioned Houston Astros, being in 13% of my lineups. So my Mets exposure, I get to a ton of Tyrone Taylor, who's leading off for the Mets today. I think he's one of the best value plays we have on the slate. Then Lindor, Pete Alonso, so no real surprise there. JD Martinez, Jeff McNeil. But even guys towards the tail end of the lineup, to your point there, Matt, I still have 13% of DJ Stewart. I've got 17% of Brett Beatty. So I'm getting to end of the lineup guys as well. The only player that's starting for the Mets that I have less than 10% of as a hitter is Starling Marte.
Yeah, I like the Mets a lot here. I ended up yesterday, because I knew Houston was going to be popular, ended up playing the Cubs with them because I knew Morton was also going to be popular. And my best lineup was a 6, 7, 8, 9, 1 Cub stack. Almost won the 250. It was like 10 points short, but just goes to show you. And that slate was a little bit smaller too. So I think those wraparound stacks, the bottom of the order stuff, is a lot more in play on slates like this.
Are there any really low-owned stacks that are standing out to you? And then we'll do our home run picks before wrapping up after this. But any of the really low-owned stacks that you're ending up getting to? And I mean, I guess we can't even answer that, because now I'm looking at the ownership. The Reds are 4% owned, and every other team is at least 8% owned. So I guess there aren't really any super low-owned stacks. So I'll just say, any interest in the Reds is leverage against Glasnow?
Personally, no. But I wouldn't fault someone who played them if that's how they play. Like, if your objective every night is to just stack against the most popular pitcher, the Reds might look appealing to you here. It's not going to work out hardly ever. But when it does, you've got a pretty easy top to the route to the top of the field. So that's the merit. I'm not playing it, but yeah, there's merit.
Yeah, I am. I'm not getting there. I have 2% of my top 150 lineups are projected as red stacks in the Sims here. So the Reds pretty much a no for me. The two teams that I have basically none of at all on this slate are the Reds and the Oakland A's. And the A's, it's a little bit annoying to me because I'm underweight to the field on Christian Javier. And then at the same time, too, like I think the A's offenses we've talked about here, like they've been better than expected coming into the season, but I'm not getting to them today. So no A's, no Reds for me. Highest priority stack is the Mets. And then other ones too, like the Astros are my favorite popular stack. But then I've got these other teams mixed in, like anywhere from like, 6 to 10% of lineups or anything like that. Anything else that's really important to you at stacks that we did not hit on?
No, I'm with you on the A's and Javier. They're both overowned. Kind of hoping that it's just like a Javier doesn't strike anyone out, but Oakland doesn't do any damage, which honestly is kind of likely. So I'm with you.
We got a question here from Einstein. He wants to know Cubs GPP stack. Yeah, Cubs are projected for 8% ownership. I'm slightly overweight to them against Jared Jones. I don't think it's a good spot or anything, but just there's enough ownership going to Jones where the Sims gave me some of the Cubs. If you're playing 1, 2, 3 lineups, the Cubs wouldn't be one of those stacks I would go to, though.
Same. I'd look for them more as mini stacks if you want to play them in like few lineups.
Yeah, I'll let you know before we do our home run picks here who are the individual Cubs that I have the most of. All right, so Cubs. I have the most of Chris Morel. Chris Morel is actually in 20% of my lineups, a lot of them being as like a one-off. So the two hitters that are showing up in lineups for me the most from the Cubs, it is Chris Morel as well as Seiya Suzuki. Home run pick, Matt, and then we will be wrapping it up for the day. Who are we picking to go yard tonight? What's the dong of the day?
Give me JD Martinez.
All right. Definitely one of my considerations. You know what? I'll go with Pete Alonso here. If I'm going to be heavy on the Mets, which you and I both are, team I'm playing in single entry, the team I have the most exposure to in large field tournaments, Pete Alonso is the hitter I have the second most exposure to. The only hitter I have more of is Tyrone Taylor, we talked about before. So Pete Alonso, he's got the most power in the Mets offense. He's going to be one of the league leaders in home runs as long as he doesn't get hurt or anything like that. He's going to lead the Mets in home runs this year. If I'm on the Mets today, why not pick Pete Alonso for my dong of the day? So guys, thank you very much for watching. We got a fun 5-game slate here today. Hopefully we could get some leverage on Taijuan Walker and they come through for us. I see we've got some messages in the chat here where it is, let's see, Nicholas Robertson went with Bregman. And then we've also got, Malakar said he went 100% Bregman there. So Castillo, all right, Malakar going with Nick Castellanos there. And then CJ the Great saying a long shot on Yasmani Grandal. But guys, thank you very much for watching. NBA Live Before Lock a little bit later today because the NBA game starts later. So NBA Live Before Lock, with it just being a 1-game slate, that's going to be from 8 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Then right after that, Josh and myself, we're going to jump on playback. We'll watch the game and find some bets, sweat the game out a little bit, and get upset when players we didn't roster end up playing well. Like oh my God, that Al Horford game yesterday. The Al Horford game is actually the dumbest thing that happened on the slate yesterday. I don't know if you played it, Matt, but Al Horford puts up 58 fantasy points. The guy's like a 0.8 fantasy point per minute producer. The spread is 16.5 points. So you figure the guy's going to be coming out of the game early. But no, the Celtics can't blow out the Celtics. And for no reason at all, Al Horford scores 2 fantasy points per minute yesterday. So I'll be taking a while to get over that. But hopefully some wins today will make me feel better about the nonsense that was Al Horford yesterday. But guys, thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you on playback in about an hour and a half. Peace out.